The stone corridors of Blackwood Manor were silent and cold. In a cramped attic room, a single candle flickered. Its weak light fell upon the face of a young woman named Eleanor. She was a maid, her hands worn from work. But tonight, her hands cradled something precious. Her infant son, Thomas. His skin was hot as fire. His breath came in shallow, ragged gasps. Eleanor pressed her lips to his tiny forehead. A sob choked her voice. She looked around the dark, empty room. There was no one. No doctor would come for a servant's child. No one in the great house below would care. She was utterly alone. She held her child closer, her body trembling with a fear so deep it had no bottom. The words escaped her lips, a broken whisper to the shadows. "My child will not survive." She said it aloud. The truth of it echoed in the barren room. It was not a cry for help to those who would not listen. It was a confession of her deepest terror to the only one who might hear. She looked down at Thomas's peaceful, fevered face. Her heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. The candle flame danced, casting long, desperate shadows on the wall. In that moment, Eleanor had nothing. No money for medicine, no status to command aid, no hope left in the world of men. All she had was a whisper in the dark and a crushing certainty that the dawn would bring an empty cradle. Eleanor's life had been one of humble service. She had arrived at Blackwood Manor as a girl of 16. Her heart was gentle, her faith a quiet flame. She worked in the kitchens, her days beginning before the sun rose. She scrubbed floors until her knees ached. She polished silver until she could see her tired reflection. Yet, she never complained. She found joy in simple things, the warmth of the baking ovens, the song of a bird outside the scullery window. She prayed every morning and every night. Her Bible, worn at the edges, was her most treasured possession. Then came Thomas. His father, a young footman, had promised her the world, but he vanished with the summer, leaving only a note and a scandal. The housekeeper, Mrs. Jenkins, had scowled. "You have brought shame upon this house," she had said. Yet, she had not cast Eleanor out. She gave her the attic room, far from the family's sight. Eleanor's love for her son was fierce and pure. It was a love that filled the lonely room. She would sing to him old hymns. She would tell him stories of a loving God. She believed, with all her heart, that God watched over them. Even here, even now. As Thomas's fever raged, Eleanor's desperation grew. She gathered her courage and descended the grand staircase. She found Mrs. Jenkins in the housekeeper's parlor. The older woman sat stiffly, reviewing household accounts. Eleanor's voice was a timid thread. "Please, Mrs. Jenkins, my boy is terribly ill. He needs a doctor." Mrs. Jenkins did not look up from her ledger. Her pen scratched across the paper. "The doctor is for the family, girl, not for the servants. You know this." Eleanor took a shaking step forward. "I beg you. He is just a baby. I have a little money saved." Mrs. Jenkins finally lifted her eyes. They were cold, devoid of mercy. "Your situation already costs this house its reputation. We will not waste resources on an illegitimate child. Use cool cloths. That is all you can do." The words were a physical blow. Eleanor stumbled back. The gulf between her world and theirs was an ocean. She returned to the attic, her hope crushed. The cold cloths did nothing. Thomas grew weaker. His cries faded to whimpers. Eleanor held him, rocking back and forth. The night deepened around them, and she knew, with a terrifying certainty, that the house's silence was a sentence. The candle burned lower. Eleanor's tears had dried into a numb ache. She laid Thomas upon her thin mattress. She knelt on the rough wooden floor beside him. She closed her eyes, not in defeat, but in surrender. She remembered the stories from her worn Bible, the widow's mite, the faith of a mustard seed. Her voice, when it came, was clear and steady. It was no longer a whisper of despair. It was a declaration to the darkness. I have nothing left to give, Lord, nothing but my child and my faith. I place him in your hands. Your will be done. A strange peace settled over her. It was not the peace of a miracle scene. It was the peace of a heart that had chosen to trust. She opened her eyes. She saw Thomas's small chest still rising and falling. The fight was not over. She dipped the cloth in the basin once more. The water was cool. She bathed his tiny face with a renewed tenderness. She began to sing a lullaby, an old hymn her own mother had sung. Her love became her prayer. And in that moment, the glimmer of hope was not a change in circumstance. It was a change in her own spirit. She would love him and trust God until the very end. The dawn came, gray and cold. Thomas had not improved. His stillness was terrifying. Eleanor knew she had to try one more time. She wrapped him tightly in her shawl and crept downstairs. She moved through the silent kitchen toward the servants' entrance. Perhaps she could run to the village. Perhaps someone there would help. As she reached for the door, a sharp voice stopped her. "And just where do you think you are going?" Mrs. Jenkins stood there, arms crossed. The head footman, Mr. Briggs, stood behind her. "Back to your room at once," Mrs. Jenkins commanded. "You will not parade that child through the village. You will not shame this house further." Eleanor clutched Thomas to her chest. "He is dying. Please, let me pass." Mr. Briggs stepped forward, his expression stern. "Your place is here. The family is arriving today. We cannot have you causing a scene." He took her firmly by the arm. He began to guide her, not toward the attic, but toward the back stair. "You will wait in the linen closet until the carriages have passed. We cannot risk the lady seeing you." The door to the small, dark closet closed. The key turned in the lock. Eleanor was sealed in darkness with her dying son. The world had truly and finally turned its back. In the absolute blackness of the linen closet, Eleanor sank to the floor. The scent of stale lavender and dust filled the air. She could barely see Thomas's face in the sliver of light under the door. His breathing was now a faint, irregular flutter. This was the end. All her strength left her. Her body folded over her child. And from the deepest cavern of her soul, a prayer erupted. It was raw and honest and torn from her very heart. "God, are you there?" She paused, the silence pressing in. "I have nowhere else to go." A sob racked her body. No one else to turn to. She held her child tighter. "You are my only refuge." Her voice dropped to a desperate whisper. "I believe in your mercy." She took a shuddering breath. "Even when I cannot see it." A final, aching plea escaped her lips. "Please, do not take my son, or take us both together." Then she fell silent. She had poured out everything. There were no more words, only a heart waiting in the dark. And in that sacred, desperate silence, something shifted. It was not in the room. It was within her. A strange, quiet knowing. The prayer had been heard. Every single word. Eleanor did not know how long she knelt there. Time had lost all meaning. Suddenly, she heard it. The distinct sound of a carriage arriving on the gravel drive. Voices echoed in the main hall. The family had returned. Then, Footsteps approached the linen closet. They were not the heavy tread of Mr. Briggs. They were lighter, quicker. The key turned in the lock. The door swung open. Standing there was not Mrs. Jenkins. It was a woman Eleanor had never seen before. She was dressed not as a servant, but in fine, dark traveling clothes. Her face was kind, etched with lines of wisdom and grace. In her arms, she carried a small leather bag. Her eyes went immediately to the bundle in Eleanor's arms. "I am Lady Caldwell," the woman said, her voice calm and authoritative. "A friend of the family. I am also a physician. Let me see the child." Eleanor was too stunned to move. A lady? A doctor? Here, gently, Lady Caldwell knelt in the doorway of the closet. She did not flinch at the dust. She simply reached out her hands. "Trust me," she said. And in that moment, Eleanor saw it. Pinned to Lady Caldwell's coat was a simple silver brooch. It was in the shape of a mustard seed, the very symbol from the parable she had clung to in the dark. This was no coincidence. The door had been opened. Lady Caldwell worked with swift, sure hands there on the floor. From her bag, she produced medicines. She listened to Thomas's chest. She prepared a tonic. "He has a severe fever, but it is not too late," she said firmly. Under her care, the color began to slowly return to Thomas's cheeks. His breathing deepened. Eleanor watched, tears of relief streaming silently. Lady Caldwell then turned her gaze to Eleanor. "Your faith has moved heaven. My dear, I was miles away. I felt a sudden, urgent compulsion to come here today. A voice in my spirit would not be silent. It said a child was in peril." She helped Eleanor to her feet. Together they walked into the light of the main hall. Mrs. Jenkins and Mr. Briggs stood frozen, their faces pale. Lady Caldwell addressed them, her voice ringing with divine authority. "This woman and her child are under my protection now. You, who had the power to help, yet chose to lock a door. You have answered to a higher authority this day." She placed a hand on Eleanor's shoulder. "You have a home with me. You will be a companion, and Thomas will be raised with care and love." The miracle was complete. God had walked through the door, not as a thunderclap, but as a quiet answer to a desperate prayer. He heard the whisper in the linen closet. He turned the key in the lock. The scripture says, "Before they call, I will answer. While they are yet speaking, I will hear." God's timing is perfect. His ways are beyond our understanding. He reaches into our darkest closets with light. Have you ever been in a place so dark you thought no one could hear you, only to find God was already turning the key? Share your story of divine timing in the comments below, and tell me where in the world you are watching from today. If this story of a humble maid and a miraculous door touched your heart, please subscribe to Faith and Miracles and leave your like below. Every story on this channel is a testament that God never abandons His children. New stories of hope and divine intervention arrive every single week, only for those who believe.